She's just a mechanic, right? Grease-stained, quiet, sitting in the back row. Colonel James Reynolds mocks her, says combat flying is for warriors, not support staff. But when Sierra Maddox unzips her jacket and reveals the Iron Talon patch, the room freezes. They thought she fixed jets. What they didn't know? She flew into fire, while others froze. We'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Comment below and subscribe to stay updated. The morning light glints off Colonel James Reynolds's polished eagles as he strides into the briefing room, savoring the mix of fear and awe in the new pilot's eyes. 20 years of command experience radiates from his squared shoulders, each step deliberate and measured. These orientation sessions are his favorite, the perfect stage to remind everyone of the natural order of things. His gaze sweeps the room, snagging on the unremarkable figure in the back row. Something about her quietness, her careful stillness, pricks at his authority like a splinter. She sits there in plain technician's garb, hands folded, watching him with unsettling calm. Not the usual nervous fidgeting he expects from support staff who find themselves among real pilots. "Combat flying isn't for everyone," Colonel James Reynolds announces, fingers unconsciously brushing his collar insignia. "It takes a special breed, years of intensive training, nerves of steel, split-second decisions that separate the elite from the support staff." He allows his lip to curl slightly, gratified by the ripple of nervous laughter. The fluorescent lights hum overhead as he continues his practiced speech, each word carefully chosen to reinforce the hierarchy he's spent decades maintaining. "I've seen countless hotshots wash out when faced with actual combat situations. Theory and maintenance logs are one thing. The real arena is something else entirely." His confidence swells as several senior pilots nod in agreement. This is his domain, his carefully ordered world, where everyone knows their place. Colonel James Reynolds permits himself a small smile as he reaches for the security clearance folder on his desk, ready to assign training rotations. The technician in the back row stands. The movement is so smooth, so controlled, it catches his eye immediately. There's something in her posture that sends an unfamiliar chill down his spine. Without a word, she shrugs off her jacket, and Colonel James Reynolds' world stops spinning. The Iron Talon patch. His throat constricts as the room falls deadly silent. That patch, the mark of the military's most elite combat unit, whispered about in reverent tones even among veteran pilots. The technician's eyes meet his, and in that moment Colonel James Reynolds feels the first tremor in his carefully constructed reality. Type Eagles Fall if you've ever misjudged someone's true power. The security clearance folder suddenly weighs 1,000 pounds in his hands. His fingers trace the eagle insignia on his collar, a gesture that had always brought comfort, now feeling like a brand of presumption. Every pair of eyes in the room shifts between him and the quiet technician, the air thick with anticipation. In the suffocating silence, Colonel James Reynolds' mind races through his 20 years of command. How many others had he dismissed? How many quiet ones had he failed to recognize? The Iron Talon patch seems to mock him from across the room, challenging every assumption he's built his authority upon. "Perhaps," he manages, his voice catching slightly, "we should review these assignments." But even as the words leave his mouth, he knows something fundamental has shifted. The natural order he so carefully maintained has cracked, and through that crack, a new reality is pouring in. Will Colonel James Reynolds' authority survive this revelation? Can decades of rigid hierarchy withstand the quiet power of a single patch? The answer lies in the growing realization that true excellence doesn't always announce itself with polished eagles and practiced speeches. The security folder trembles almost imperceptibly in his hands as he struggles to maintain composure. But deep inside, Colonel James Reynolds knows his carefully ordered world will never be the same. Colonel James Reynolds grips the edge of his mahogany desk, staring at the classified file that shatters everything he thought he knew. His hands, steady through countless combat missions, now tremble as they trace over the heavily redacted pages of Sierra Maddox's service record. Each black line feels like a personal accusation, mocking his earlier certainty, his dismissive words echoing in his mind with painful clarity. Through the office window, the morning sun catches his colonel's eagles, casting accusatory shadows across the wall. James Reynolds has worn these symbols of authority for 15 years, using them to judge, to dismiss, to control. Now they feel like anchors dragging him into depths he never knew existed. "Sir, here are the additional files you requested on Iron Talon operations," his aide announces, dropping another stack of folders that land with damning weight. James Reynolds' throat tightens as he opens the first one. Combat missions in sectors he's only heard whispered about. Operational details that make his own experience look like training exercises. And through it all, Sierra Maddox's name, appearing again and again in mission reports that redefine everything he thought he understood about combat excellence. The distant roar of jet engines draws his attention back to the window. He watches Sierra moving across the tarmac with that same quiet efficiency he had dismissed just hours ago. Her movements are precise, economical, not the actions of someone learning, but of someone who has mastered their craft through the crucible of real combat. James Reynolds' chest tightens as he recognizes the walk of a veteran warrior, one he should have seen immediately if his own prejudices hadn't blinded him. "Computer, pull up the Iron Talon operational statistics," he commands, his voice barely steady. The holographic display flickers to life, filling his office with data that feels like a personal indictment. Success rates that defy belief, casualty numbers that speak of legendary skill, leadership evaluations that put his own to shame. Each data point hammers home the magnitude of his error, the depth of his biased assumptions. A memory surfaces, unwanted but insistent. His own commanding officer, 20 years ago, telling him he'd never make it past captain. "Some people just don't have what it takes, Reynolds," the man had said, judgment dripping from every word. He had used that memory as fuel, driving himself to prove the man wrong. Now he tastes the bitter irony of becoming exactly what he once despised. The morning light catches his reflection in the window glass. Colonel James Reynolds sees himself with new eyes, not the respected commander he imagined, but a man whose authority has become a shield for his own prejudices. The sound of another jet engine testing on the tarmac makes him flinch. Each roar feels like an accusation, reminding him of missions he led, decisions he made, pilots he judged without ever looking past his own preconceptions. His computer chimes with an incoming message. "Colonel Reynolds, the Iron Talon combat footage you requested is ready for review." His hand hovers over the play button, suddenly afraid of what else he might discover. The timestamp shows operations from just 6 months ago. While he was dismissing Sierra as unqualified, she was leading missions that would become classified legends. Type blind pride if you've ever discovered your assumptions were completely wrong. James Reynolds' fingers trace the eagles on his collar, these symbols of authority that now feel like brands of shame. How many others had he misjudged? How many careers had his biased assumptions impacted? The weight of these questions presses down on him like a physical force, making his spacious office feel increasingly claustrophobic. A knock at his door makes him start. "Colonel Reynolds, sir. The Joint Chiefs are requesting an update on our combat readiness evaluations." The words hit him like physical blows. His evaluations. How many of them were tainted by the same prejudices that had blinded him to Sierra's true capabilities? The afternoon sun casts long shadows across his office as Colonel James Reynolds begins the painful process of reviewing every evaluation he's submitted in the past year. Each folder reveals another possible instance of his biased judgment, another career he might have unfairly assessed. The task feels overwhelming, but he forces himself to continue, knowing he owes this reckoning to every service member he's ever commanded. The distant sound of boots in the corridor makes him tense. Every passing footstep could be Sierra, could be another officer whose true value he failed to recognize. Colonel James Reynolds's authority, once a comfortable armor, now feels like a responsibility he's failed to honor. The weight of his eagles grows heavier with each passing hour, with each new revelation of his own blind spots. Share this story if you believe leadership means acknowledging our mistakes. As day turns to evening, Colonel James Reynolds sits in his darkening office, surrounded by the evidence of his failures. Tomorrow, he'll have to face Sierra again, knowing what he knows now. The thought fills him with a dread he hasn't felt since his first combat mission. But beneath the dread, something else grows. A determination to tear down the walls of prejudice he himself helped build, starting with his own. Colonel James Reynolds paces his office, the sound of his polished boots against the floor failing to drown out the growing murmurs from the corridor. His fingers brush against the eagles on his collar, symbols that once brought pride, but now feel like lead weights dragging him down. The whispers are everywhere, spreading through the base like wildfire, each conversation a fresh reminder of his colossal error in judgment. His phone buzzes again. Another notification about #Iron Talon truth, trending on the military forums. Colonel James Reynolds' hands tremble slightly as he scrolls through the comments. Videos of Sierra's simulator performance are being shared across multiple platforms, accompanied by her service record that someone leaked. Each post chips away at his carefully constructed authority. "Sir?" His aide appears at the door, hesitation evident in his voice. "The afternoon training session is starting. Lieutenant Maddox will be demonstrating advanced evasion techniques." Colonel James Reynolds straightens his uniform, a futile attempt to armor himself against what's coming. The walk to the simulator room feels like a march to his own execution. The usual respectful nods from passing personnel are replaced with awkward glances and hurried steps in the opposite direction. His kingdom is crumbling, and everyone knows it. The whine of the simulator's hydraulics fills the room as he enters. Sierra sits in the cockpit, her movements fluid and precise, while his top instructors watch in reverent silence. Colonel James Reynolds stands at the back, the same position where he once dismissed her as just a technician. Now, as she executes a perfect combat maneuver that he himself couldn't replicate, the irony threatens to suffocate him. "That's a textbook Iron Talon defensive role," Captain Martinez whispers to another instructor. "I've only seen it in training videos before." The words hit Colonel James Reynolds like physical blows. His mind flashes to the moment he scoffed at her Iron Talon patch, the memory now a burning brand of shame. The simulation screen shows her aircraft dancing through virtual warfare with deadly grace, each movement a reminder of his prejudiced assumptions. His phone buzzes again. A new thread about the quiet technician who outranks everyone in flight hours is gaining traction. A young cadet at the back of the room is recording the simulation on his phone. Tomorrow's viral content already in the making. Colonel James Reynolds knows he should stop it, but his authority feels as hollow as his earlier boasts. Have you ever witnessed pure skill make pride collapse? Leave 1. If you've seen someone's arrogance shatter in real time. The simulation ends. Sierra exits the cockpit to enthusiastic applause from the instructors. His instructors. Colonel James Reynolds watches as they crowd around her, eager to learn from the pilot he had dismissed. His eagles catch the fluorescent light, mocking him with their gleam. He reaches up to touch them, these symbols of rank that suddenly mean nothing in the face of true merit. In 6 short hours, his carefully maintained hierarchy has inverted. Each ping from his phone, each whispered conversation, each shared video drives home the magnitude of his mistake. Colonel James Reynolds stands alone in the corner of his own training facility, watching his authority dissolve in the wake of Sierra's quiet excellence. The base will never be the same. His command will never be the same. As he retreats to his office, Colonel James Reynolds realizes with growing dread that this is only the beginning of his reckoning. The eagles on his collar feel heavier with each step, transforming from badges of honor into weights of accountability. Colonel James Reynolds walks into the maintenance hangar, footsteps hesitant where they were once authoritative. The eagle insignia weighs heavily in my hand as I remove it from my collar, a gesture that would have been unthinkable just hours ago. The familiar scent of jet fuel and hydraulic fluid fills my nostrils, but today it carries a different meaning. Not the smell of grunt work, as I'd arrogantly assumed, but the aroma of true mastery. Sierra Maddox doesn't look up from the F-22 engine she's methodically disassembling. The rhythmic ping of her wrench against metal continues, each strike a reminder of my monumental misjudgment. My stomach tightens as I watch her work, remembering how I'd dismissed her as just a technician this morning. The Iron Talon patch that revealed her elite status still burns in my memory. "Lieutenant Maddox," I begin, my voice carrying none of its usual command. The wrench pauses mid-strike. "I've come to apologize and to make a request." The words taste foreign on my tongue. Colonel James Reynolds doesn't apologize, or at least he didn't until today. She sets down her tools with deliberate precision, each movement reflecting the same expertise I'd blindly overlooked. The fluorescent lights catch the grease on her hands that have both maintained and piloted these machines with equal skill. My shame deepens. "We need you teaching, not just maintaining," I continue, forcing myself to meet her steady gaze. "Your understanding of these aircraft goes beyond what most pilots ever achieve. I swallow hard. I was wrong to assume otherwise." The hangar's vastness seems to amplify the silence that follows. A distant radio crackles with tower communications, and somewhere a compressor kicks on with a mechanical whine. My collar feels naked without its insignia, but the humility feels right. Necessary. "Sir," she finally responds, wiping her hands on a shop rag, "I've been requesting a training position for 8 months. There's no accusation in her tone, just fact. That makes it worse. My phone buzzes in my pocket, probably another notification about the video of our morning confrontation. Reynolds. Wrong has been trending for hours. I ignore it. This moment matters more than my wounded pride. "I know. I reviewed all your applications this afternoon. Your combat experience alone." I trail off, remembering the impressive record I'd discovered. "But it's your dual expertise that we really need. You understand these machines inside and out. That's invaluable for training." She studies me for a long moment, likely searching for any trace of the condescending officer who'd dismissed her credentials mere hours ago. "The next training rotation starts Monday," she says finally. "I'll need authorization to adjust my maintenance schedule." "You'll have it within the hour." I extend my hand, offering her my eagle insignia. "This is yours. A reminder that excellence doesn't always wear its credentials openly." Her eyes widen slightly. She understands the gravity of the gesture. After a moment's hesitation, she accepts it, her grease-stained fingers a stark contrast against the polished metal. "Drop 2, if you believe true leadership means admitting when you're wrong." "Lieutenant," I add as I turn to leave, "I look forward to learning from you." The words come easier now, weighted with truth rather than pride. The hangar door closes behind me with a resonant clang, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Colonel James Reynolds emerges into the afternoon sun, rank insignia absent, but standing taller than before. Sometimes, I reflect, the greatest strength lies in acknowledging our weaknesses. The viral hashtag doesn't sting anymore. It's a badge of transformation, not shame. A young airman snaps to attention as I pass, then does a double-take at my bare collar. Let them look. Let them wonder. Let them see that even a colonel can learn and grow. The setting sun glints off the aircraft on the flight line, and for the first time, I see them through new eyes, not just as machines to be mastered, but as complex systems requiring both the pilot's touch and the technician's understanding. Sierra Maddox possesses both. And now, thanks to her, so will her future students. Colonel James Reynolds stands at attention before the base commander, his previously pristine uniform now missing the eagles that had defined his identity for decades. Through the window, he watches Sierra Maddox leading a formation of pilots, their jets cutting through the azure sky with a precision he'd never achieved in his training programs. 27 years of service, he mutters, fingers instinctively reaching for the empty space where his rank insignia once rested. The formal reprimand sits heavy in his hands. But it's not the paper that weighs on him. It's the truth it represents. The base's investigation had revealed not just his treatment of Sierra, but a pattern of prejudiced decisions that had cost the Air Force countless talented personnel. The roar of engines overhead draws his attention again. Sierra's Iron Talon patch catches the sunlight as she demonstrates a complex maneuver to a group of admiring cadets. Colonel James Reynolds feels the bitter taste of irony. He'd dismissed her as a mere technician, while she'd been silently carrying the mark of elite combat excellence all along. "I was so focused on command that I forgot about leadership," he reflects, watching his former students now eagerly gathering around Sierra. "I confused authority with understanding, rank with wisdom." His hand trembles as he signs the last page of his retirement papers, marking the end of a career built on misguided principles. The base museum curator approaches, requesting his eagles for a new exhibit about institutional change. "Display them well," Colonel James Reynolds says, carefully removing them from their box. "Let them remind others what happens when we let prejudice blind us to talent." The curator nods, adding a small placard. "The Reynolds Paradigm Shift, when authority learned to listen." Later that day, standing before his final assembly, Colonel James Reynolds faces his gathered officers. "I've spent my career looking at patches and pins, thinking they told the whole story," he begins, his voice carrying across the hushed room. "But true capability doesn't always wear its credentials on its sleeve. Sometimes, like Sierra Maddox showed us, it works quietly, proves itself through actions. not assertions. A formation of jets thunders overhead, Sierra leading another training flight. Colonel James Reynolds watches them disappear into the horizon, their contrails forming perfect parallel lines against the setting sun. The Iron Talon patch wasn't just a symbol of combat excellence, he continues. It was a mirror showing me my own biases. I needed that reflection more than I knew. The next morning, as he clears out his office, Colonel James Reynolds finds an old photo of his first day as commander. He stares at his younger self, standing proud and rigid, eagles gleaming. "We rise by lifting others," he whispers, placing the photo in his box. "I just wish I'd learned that sooner." Share this video if you believe in the power of challenging our assumptions. Together, we can build a military and a world where talent speaks louder than prejudice. His final act is to pin a small Iron Talon patch to the wall of his empty office, not as a symbol of authority, but as a permanent reminder that excellence wears many faces, speaks in many voices, and sometimes teaches its most powerful lessons in silence. The door closes behind Colonel James Reynolds for the last time, the sound echoing through the corridor. But in the skies above, Sierra's jets continue to soar, carrying forward a new legacy of leadership built on understanding, not assumption. The eagles that once crowned his shoulders now rest in the museum, testament to a truth he learned too late. True authority comes not from commanding others, but from learning to see them clearly. Drop 3. If this story changed how you think about leadership,